Good afternoon. Welcome everybody to our predictions webinar. We're going to be talking about, what is going to happen to storage in 2021. My name is Jennifer. I'm with Cloudian, and today we have some great speakers that are going to join us to talk about this. First up, I would like to introduce Sanjay. He is the Senior Director of Products and Solutions at Cloudian. Welcome, Sanjay.
Hello, Jen. Thank you very much. Looking forward to this talk.
Next up, we have Grant Jacobson. He'll be joining us as well. Welcome, Grant.
Thanks, Jen. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show.
And Grant is the Director of Technology and Alliances at Cloudian. So again, with all the unpredictability of 2021 coming and everything crazy that's kind of happened this year, we are eager to make our 2021 predictions. We'll go through our top 8 predictions for the new year, all centered around data storage. And to kick things off, our first prediction is that number 1 is that the public cloud and on-prem storage will merge. So with that, I would like to hand it off to Grant. Grant, how do you see this playing out in 2021?
Yeah, sure. Well, one of the trends that's happened so far this year are public clouds offering on-prem storage, the on-prem solutions, really. So you have, for example, AWS with Outposts as an example. They're also, of course, continue to offer their public cloud service. So what's happened really is a combination of on-prem and cloud coming together, and it's no longer either or. It's no longer either public cloud or on-prem. It's really two sides of the enterprise storage coin.
Yeah, and I think, Grant, you mentioned a very valid point, right? That the public clouds are coming on-prem. And the way I look at this and the way I see this is it's basically expanding on what you just said. What public cloud has done has changed the way infrastructure is been looked at in terms of what it can do, right? It's always on, it has scale, it has availability, it caters to different applications and so on and so forth. And based on what the application ecosystem is and the market is, people and the CIOs and the CTOs are just looking at the best of breed from an infrastructure perspective that meets their requirements. So this line is going to get blurred, right? There are going to be services that are running in the public cloud. They still need access to data on-prem and vice versa to bring that flexibility, bring that elasticity. The biggest thing that we have seen at Cloudian and what we have seen when we talk to our customers is how does Cloudian bring the cloud technology into your data center? Right, by offering this scale-out, distributed, API-based object storage for all your unstructured data with enterprise data management and have the ability to integrate into the cloud, whether it's running in the cloud, whether it's tiering to the cloud, and building that bridge that will allow you to seamlessly operate your application across those platforms. So to me, yes, I agree. The public cloud will become a nomenclature as to how to consume things, but it's going to be, in the end, right, the cloud-like technology, the elasticity, the scale, and that's what we are trying to get in on the on-prem side.
Right. And what is interesting to your point is you have the on-prem vendors such as Cloudian offering the ability to tier and replicate to public cloud. So customers can actually have a choice where on-prem data centers, public cloud data centers, it really can be managed wherever you need your data.
Exactly. Gone are the days on those vendor lock-ins, right? You want that portability, you want that compatibility, you want that flexibility, you want that elasticity. That's what, when you ask people, what do you mean by public cloud? That's exactly what they mean. They may just use a cloud as a way to get their means sorted out, but that's exactly what they're looking for, is that elasticity, the flexibility, the scale. And you'll see more and more solutions on the on-prem side do that, and as a virtue of that, bridge those gaps. So I think this is definitely happening. There's no doubt about it.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Sanjay and Grant. I think that's pretty much spot on. So next up for 2021 predictions, we are going to predict that cyber insurance will demand more robust data protection. Especially this year as more people work remote, companies were forced to adapt their workforce to, life outside the office and ransomware attacks, and things like that. So for that reason, this is one of our predictions. And I'd like to hand it off to Sanjay again to tell us a little about his insight.
Jen, I think this pandemic has probably brought one thing to the forefront, right? The importance of data. As more and more people are working remotely, and I think we have over the last few months launched multiple solutions, but the core essence that has come to the forefront and it's not just this pandemic, right? The way the market is evolving, where data is becoming the lifeline. When you talk about lifeline for many businesses, right? Businesses are now trying to understand how they can leverage this data to monetize it and so on and so forth. And whenever you have such rich assets, that means there are threats to it, right? People want to attack. People want to leverage this as a way to extort, whether it's ransomware or whether it's rogue threats that are internal or external, right? Data protection hasn't been in the forefront when it comes to this kind of threats, right? And now it has become the most critical aspect of it. And with ransomware, now people are taking this even more seriously, including the insurance side of it, right? There are companies who are trying to get security through cyber insurance that can protect against ransomware. And in order for you to get that protection, get that insurance, you need to have a very robust data management and data protection story. And not just protection from doing firewalls. You need to protect the asset that is the most important piece, and that is data. How do you prevent people from accessing that data, tampering that data, or even messing around with the systems and overriding the access? So that's where things are going to change. In cybersecurity has been at the top of the mind for the last few months and years. And now it's going to get even more critical for a lot of big enterprises who don't want to take chances where it can impact their reputation, it can impact their businesses, it can impact many different facts of their livelihood, because data is that lifeline for the CIOs and CXOs. So to me, this is something that we are seeing this year, and it's going to become even bigger next year.
Yeah, I'll just chime in and say, if enterprise organizations have not become sensitive to data security, the cyber insurance implication will certainly get their attention. What's really interesting, and as Sanjay says, what will become even more important next year, 2021, is the cyber insurance providers, the carriers, are actually raising their prices now because of the ransomware threat that Sanjay was talking about. They are declining to pay out on ransoms because customers were out of compliance with their data security solution. They are really kind of cracking down because the amount of ransomware in the world today is just kind of exponentially growing. So cyber insurance is going to be really a driving factor to getting that robust data protection so that organizations can actually ensure that they have insurance, that they qualify for insurance, that their data security meets criteria that the insurance companies are setting, and otherwise they will find themselves exposed.
Yeah, I think data. Yeah, and people can just relate this in a very simple way, right? Cyber insurance is protection for organizations against these attacks. What is really needed by organization is a solution to protect against those attacks. And as a result of that, now why cyber insurance is going to be critical is because insurance is needed to protect against companies, business models, companies' reputations, and so on and so forth. And those insurance providers are going to ask, what are you doing to protect it? And that's where solutions like Cloudian come into the picture. How does Cloudian enable, or the storage layers, which are actually protecting the data, protect against those attacks so that you can get those insurance? So insurance to me is a driver, but the core change that needs to happen is how enterprises and organizations look at their data protection strategy and how are they overhauling this, and what are those things that they need to look at, right? Getting your data protected, unauthorized access, making sure there is backup copy of it. And that's why data protection is going to be the front and center for next year.
Perfect. I think that's spot on. And with that, I think we'll move on to our next prediction, which is, we're predicting that ransom will be taken out of ransomware. So between Sanjay, Grant, can you just extrapolate on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I'll start. So just picking up Sanjay's point, if you have the right data security in your storage, there is no way the attack will be successful. There's no way that the threat actors launching the ransomware attacks are going to be successful at getting at the data. So having that proper data security with storage, having immutable data so that the storage is not tamper-proof is really the key here. And once that happens, it's going to be a much less incentive for the ransomware attackers to actually try and do that.
Ransomware till last year or two probably was not even top of the mind for a lot of these people. And when we say ransomware, I just want to level set, because I did a webinar, I think a few weeks back on this around security, and just wanted to level set. What is ransomware? Ransomware is when someone comes in and takes control of your assets and holds you ransom on this, right? In this particular case, that asset is your data. What they come in and they basically encrypt your data, and they tell you, okay, your data is no longer accessible to you unless until you pay us ransom. That's where we'll give you the key. Now, what Grant just said, I'm just trying to simplify this for people to understand, because on one side it is very simple. On the other side is very complicated, because you have to protect against this. And the best way to protect against this is to make sure that you have a copy of your data. And that copy of your data is immutable. And what I mean by immutable is that you have that data which cannot be overwritten. That means anybody who gets access into your data cannot encrypt it and hold you ransom. That means your data should be written where you cannot overwrite it. You can read it as many times as you want. It's called worm storage. So that's the first thing that people need to do. To remove the word ransom from this, you need to protect data. That's where you will be able to get yourself out of this ransomware situation. Now, there are many solutions out there. What you need to really do is be careful of what solutions you're opting for, because you don't want to just opt and say, I did worm storage or immutable storage and I'm still not protected. Why? Because in this modern day and age, there are backdoors where you get those rogue players coming in and tampering with your NTP settings. That means your system settings are changed so that you now have root access or whatever it is, where even if you configure it, people can override it. So two things that my recommendation: make sure that you have a copy of your data that is immutable. Make sure that your systems are tamper-proof. That means there is no root access. There is no way for rogue admins to come in, change the settings so that your data then becomes susceptible and risk. And look for certifications, whether it's federal certifications, regulatory certifications that have ways to say that, this solution, whichever you are choosing, is going to protect you, because that's what the cyber insurance guys are going to ask for it. And just so that the reason why I'm very passionate about this is because this is very, very critical. And Cloudian, we do offer all the three things that I just said. We offer immutable storage, We make sure that the solution is tamper-proof by removing root access and unauthorized access. And third is we have all the certifications that are needed. That's the best way to remove the ransom out of ransomware. And to me, that is going to be the number one phenomena and when it comes to enterprise data and storage in the next year.
Right. It's really the new gold standard for data security.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. We're at the point where you don't have to be paying ransom. So, again, listen to what Sanjay says, just employ these few things and the products that you have because, backups just aren't going to cut it these days.
Yeah, and I'll do a plug-in out here, Jen, because we do have many assets on our website. So please, we did have webinars that are dedicated to this where we went in details about ransomware. And to me, this is going to be a most important piece when it comes to data security and protection.
Perfect. Yeah, and we'll please feel free to view the links that we have. As mentioned, some of these other assets are available for you to educate yourself on this topic. And now moving on, another change coming up that we are predicting. So we're predicting that self-managing storage in data centers will become mainstream. So what do you guys think about this?
This is a technologist in me who would say, this is long time waiting that it comes to fruition, right? And I would probably even go further to just say it's self-managing infrastructure, right? We are getting to a point where, we have this automation and where applications are going to dictate what happens to your infrastructure, what are the SLAs that you need, what kind of resources do you need, and the ecosystem around it are going to make it possible for us to keep an hands-off approach where the SLAs are defined, and then you have robust APIs that are going to come in and provision the resources for you. That's one thing. The other side of the story is when you talk about self-managing is what happens when there is failures, right? How do you know that predictive AI-based operations, right? Where you follow and get analytics on your system's behavior and usage and then automatically figure out whether the drive is going to go down, let's send them a replacement, or whether you're running out of space, let's order new storage and new infrastructure that can be seamlessly added in a non-disruptive way. And we have started seeing this. Cloud has made this possible. You're seeing more and more cloud, remember I told this, cloud is bringing those technologies into your on-prem world, bringing the cloud operations, building those bridges. And we are finally seeing solutions that are being catered in building this infrastructure as a service or automation that will allow this to become mainstream. And you're seeing players many solutions, including Cloudian, where we have invested in solutions like HyperIQ, right, which allows us to get complete observability of your infrastructure, gets you predictability in terms of predictive maintenance, can alert you, can get you automated services, set a schedule, and allows you to non-disruptively grow, has APIs where applications can just randomly use those APIs and provision the resources that they need. So this is definitely on the cusp of getting there. And I would sure wish that we see more and more of this because, it will make the life of every enterprise IT guys much more easier.
I think the other thing driving that, of course, is demand by the enterprise organizations who want to take advantage of that benefit.
Okay.
They want to avoid outages, to avoid disruption, to better match storage with their workloads in an automated way that results in better productivity, savings, and even better security when all of that is integrated.
Absolutely. And I think that's what the drivers are, right? The applications are changing. The enterprises are looking to reduce their OpEx spend. They're trying to get more done. And that is fueling this innovation. And that's going to fuel even the transition and becoming it a mainstream. So we'll definitely see more and more. It might take a little longer. It'll go beyond the year, but we'll definitely see more of those self-managing systems becoming mainstream.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. It's exciting to be here, at this time where there's this technology that's taking off. So that's great. And next up, our prediction is Kubernetes and object storage will increasingly be used together. So that's what we're predicting will happen in 2021. Can you guys tell us a little bit more?
Sure. Okay. Let's take the easy part. Kubernetes in the news every day and for a long time now. The interesting thing here is it's actually enabling this, what they call cloud native, having applications who are designed for the cloud actually run on premise. Mm-hmm. And you have kind of part of that, the ability for those cloud native container-based applications to take advantage of the S3 compatible object storage. So increasingly, you have developers who are writing applications that need and require object storage for those particular workloads. And those workloads include anything around massive data-intensive applications. And previously, they haven't been able to do that. Sanjay.
Yeah, and to be when you talk about Kubernetes, again, the technology person in me would like to go and take a step back and say, why Kubernetes? And the simple answer is, look at it, Kubernetes is an orchestration layer for containerized use, and containers are basically resources that to provision your resources, right? A way to provision and bring that portability. Think about it as what virtual machines did, virtualization did about 10, 20 years ago. Containers are doing it to modern infrastructure right now, right? And what Kubernetes along with Docker Swarm are doing is making it easy for people to orchestrate that whole environment and bring that kind of automation that we talked about in the is to the infrastructure, right? And if you look at it today, many organizations are throwing their weight behind Kubernetes because that's when you see adoption. That's when you see people seeing the value of containers and Kubernetes and what it brings to the table. Talking about object storage and Kubernetes, I think that's a very fascinating thing, right? Once you look at it, what does Kubernetes do? It leverages APIs. It's a declarative way of managing, orchestrating, operationalizing resources. Object storage is a natively API-driven storage solution. Unlike the traditional storages, which are like SAN and NAS and all those things, object storage is managed access through APIs. So now you combine those two together. Kubernetes needs APIs, object storage is APIs. It's a marriage made in heaven, right? And made in cloud in this case, because that's where it is, right? If you look at today, and that's what, Grant, you were referring to, cloud native applications. Those applications are leveraging APIs to access the underlying infrastructure and resources, and Kubernetes is making that possible. And object storage is going to enable that application, because now you have an easy way to provision and manage your storage through APIs and access that storage, can scale that storage, make it available in read many, write many ways, and still offer all the enterprise features. To me, object storage are the definition of cloud native storage, and Kubernetes is the framework of choice for cloud native applications and infrastructure. That's the reason why they are increasingly used together. So I think that's the technologist in me trying to give you a little bit background, and that's why I believe this is a great story.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And along those lines, we can kind of go on to our next prediction as well. So our next prediction is that Kubernetes will migrate to on-prem use. And, we do see a rise of on-prem adoption from players like VMware, and, Kubernetes will be close behind. So what do you guys have to say on that?
No, let me just start, Grant, by what I was saying in the previous thing, right? Kubernetes is definitely a way to simplify your operations and orchestration and infrastructure resources. And like I said, right, on-prem world, even the applications are changing, right? Now the applications are no longer just about business functions. These are applications that are now reliant on getting meaningful insights from data, right? Those cloud native application, even though we use the word cloud native, basically what it is, it's a microservices based architecture. Whether you're doing it in the cloud or whether you're doing it in on-prem, those applications are very disaggregated, right? They need all these different services that need different access. And in order for it to work seamlessly as one application unit, Kubernetes will make that possible, because now we are having different containers and ecosystem that needs to be managed. And it was easy to do it in cloud, but with the ability to support traditional storage through CSI, support cloud native storage like object storage for on-prem workloads, people are seeing use of Kubernetes in on-prem with these underlying storage solutions like Cloudian object storage, so that they can use it for their applications and they don't need to go to the cloud. And we are seeing more and more containers and Kubernetes be used in the DevOps kind of way in the on-prem world. And with the portability of on-prem and cloud, I think this becomes a very moot point now. We'll definitely see more and more containers and Kubernetes in the next year.
No, that's right. It's just kind of interesting because Kubernetes really for a long time, since the beginning, is really in public cloud. And with advent of new trends championed by companies like VMware, a Cloudian partner, working together to actually provide solutions with object storage and Kubernetes together. A great example is what was announced in September, the vSAN data persistence platform combined with Cloudian object storage. Great example of that, where you've got Kubernetes with Cloudian object storage on-prem for those workloads. And companies are figuring out that actually this is a really good fit. It's not just public cloud anymore. They can have it both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And if VMware is investing in this and bringing it to prime time, with supporting Kubernetes on vSphere, you can expect a lot of enterprises and organizations who would be willing to jump on it, right? You'll see major distributions like Red Hat OpenShift, VMware, SUSE, Rancher. Everybody is now going to bring that ecosystem into the on-prem world. And we are already seeing more and more usage of object storage for various use cases, whether it's AI, machine learning. And this is where you are bringing those microservices closer to the data. And that's where Kubernetes it's at its best, right? In terms of making sure that those resources are provisioned and made available for those modern applications. And you'll see more and more happening on-prem.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. I think that's super on point. We're going to switch gears a little bit for our next prediction. So the next prediction we have is that Flash vendors will struggle to re-architecture their platforms for scalability. Everyone loves Flash, but scaling up, especially with the amount of data that everyone's accumulating these days, is going to be a little tough. So do you guys want to tell us a little about that?
Sure. I think I did a Mythbuster on this some time back about Flash and the role of Flash in the modern infrastructure. So again, shameless plug on my side. But to be very honest, if you look at where Flash is valuable, right? Flash has changed the dynamics in how the storage subsystems are built, designed, because now you need to focus on your optimized I/O paths because you don't have the typical latencies involved with spinning drives where the sectors and the spindles are moved around, right? That means the storage subsystem has to deliver on the values of Flash. And a lot of people in the in the traditional storage world have build their systems to deliver on those performance, right? But if you look at where the modern infrastructure and storage systems are going, it's all about cloud-like scale, right? We're talking about unprecedented growth in the storage side, where you're talking about, the next 3 years are going to generate that much data that we haven't seen in the last maybe 10 plus years or more than that. And it's mind-boggling to see how you can fundamentally change your storage design to do scale out when they are not designed for that, right? You can try and probably do those wrappers around it, but that's going to come with limitations. Like, if you look at the old days, distributed computing has never been easy. Scale out has never been easy. Unless and until you're architected to do scale out, you will have trouble delivering on the value of flash and scale simultaneously. So you will definitely struggle. The traditional vendors will struggle to meet the scalability aspect of it, because you can still meet the performance by optimizing your stack. And in order to deliver both, you need a solution that is designed with scale, because you can always optimize the IO path, but you can't design and change your architecture for scale.
Yes, and that said, people will still use Flash anyway, and we're certainly doing that at Cloudian. We've got our object storage running on Flash. It really comes down to economics, as Sanjay was saying. When you're scaling out, does this stay cost effective? So I think we'll find out, how that goes. That's really going to be the question. But certainly we're seeing use cases around AI and machine learning, for example, analytics and big data. Companies like Splunk, for example, run their hot data on Flash and warm data on disk. So it's really a balance there, but it seems to be increasingly adopted where there's that need, and the ability to balance that between the need to scale and as the data sets grow larger and larger, how much of that will stay on Flash and how much of it will stay on disk.
Yeah, and I think, Grant, you made a good point, right? Flash has become ubiquitous when it comes to storage. Even that's the mythbuster I was referring to. Like, Flash and object storage still go very well together. We have customers deployed with that. We have released our Flash storage solution because everybody needs performance. It's how you leverage that. And at Cloudian, we have the ability to leverage Flash to deliver performance. We have an internal hybrid architecture that allows us to then leverage the capacity tiers to lower the TCO. And again, like I said, once you have a scale-out platform, you can incorporate Flash to deliver performance and then be able to get the best of the breed to the customers and the use cases and the applications, whether it's analytics, AI, machine learning, so on and so forth, where you need that scale, where you need that amount of data to be able to deliver the value. So you definitely see this, Jen.
Looking forward to the future here. So we'll see how things pan out with all this increase in data. So that brings us to our last prediction. So we're predicting that finally, talking about myths in the Mythbuster webinar, on another myth, we're finally going to leave behind the myth that object storage is only for archive. We've been synonymous in terms of object storage and archive and things like that. So we're looking to leave that behind, and we think that people in the masses are going to finally realize the true potential for this type of data. You guys want to talk a little to that as well?
Shall I start?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Well, of course, object storage is very well known for backup. It's a great fit. It's a key use case. We talked about ransomware just a minute ago and the need for protection. That's a great backup use case. But as the prediction states, really enterprises are now taking advantage of the economics of object storage. They're taking advantage of the scale out abilities and other benefits for other use cases, for other types of workload. And that is everything from the Splunk example I just gave you to the AI, ML, and other analytics applications we just talked about, but really is many different use cases across many different industries. So whether you're a media and entertainment company, your financial services, higher education with research data. It's not just about backup and archive.
You know, I love the idea of busting myths, especially when this absolutely wrong, right? You know, in this particular case, this whole idea and typecasting of object storage as only for archive just drives me nuts, right? You know, and that needs to be busted. And the best way to do that is with facts. Let's just talk about facts. What is archive? Archive is a repository for storage, and typically, I think there's a statistics for every copy of a primary storage that is about 3x the time of amount of data that is for the secondary storage, something like that. And that's the reason why your archives, if you have to keep it them for a long period of time, like 7 years, 10 years, you're going to have tons and tons of data. When you have that much data, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? How do I reduce the cost of it? Object storage offers scale that you can easily store hundreds of petabytes and can infinitely scale. It brings in the TCO because it's lower cost in terms of economics, and that's the reason why people used object storage for archive. However, just to getting typecast and myth that that's the only use case is absolutely rubbish, because as we talked earlier, right, you know, we are living in this day and age where the amount of data that is getting generated has far exceeded what data was generated in the last 30 years, right? We have seen and we'll continue to see this phenomenal growth on data, and we're talking about zettabytes and zettabytes of data. The only place you can store that data like this at this scale is object storage because of the ability to scale and ability to offer TCO. Now, when you talk about storage of data, that's not going to be archived. That can be your primary data because of depending on your applications, like whether it's a media application, the amount of media files. You know how much data that one 4K video generates? I think that's what people should look at. And that's where you need to store. File systems have limitation. They cannot store that much data. And in order for you to store that data, you need object storage. So it's not for archive. Now you're talking about monetizing the data, running analytics, running AI, machine learning, like Grant, what you're talking about. Unless and until you have the data, you cannot run off those things. So all those applications now become the key stakeholders for object storage. So object storage is now, to me, a platform for storage and data that can be used for various use cases, whether it's archive, whether it's analytics, whether it's media application, whether it's healthcare applications, so on and so forth. And I think you will see that object storage will soon become the de facto when it comes to storing unstructured data. And to me, this is the myth that needs to be busted. People need to get out of their their legacy frameworks and their minds and not listen to those legacy vendors who try to perpetuate this myth because they don't have a solution. So to me, this is absolutely a myth. This has been long busted, and still people talk about this, and this should not be even a discussion, right? So prediction is hopefully people learn enough to not typecast and put object storage in one small bucket. Pun intended.
Awesome. And I think for the most part, that's going to wrap up our session. So that's our 8 predictions for data storage in Yep, that wraps up our session. I would like to thank Grant and Sanjay for their time today, and to our audience for joining us as well. We do have some time for questions, so please be sure to enter them into the tab at the bottom if you haven't already done so. And I wanted to point out again that we have included content in the attachments tab on the bottom of your screen, so be sure to check those out. And with that being said, let's see what our questions are here. We do have a question. The question is, they are interested in learning how Cloudian connects on-prem object storage to the public cloud, and what solutions are offered by Cloudian for connecting on-prem public object storage. Grant or Sanjay, would either of you guys like to take that?
Sure. So there is native capability in Cloudian's object storage we call Hyperstore. that can tier or replicate data to any of the public clouds in the same way that we would do that to just another location. So that's built in. Typically, our customers do that for, say, disaster recovery, just having data in another location. Sanjay, anything you want to add there?
No, I think you got it right. And I think the other thing is, being a software-defined solution, you can always run Cloudian in the cloud and create that hybrid cluster with on-prem and the cloud, and be able to seamlessly have data management policies that allow for placement of data. Like, we have had customers who have deployed in Azure so that their applications can get S3 access from a front end in Azure and even Google in some case, right? So Cloudian offers complete flexibility and integration when it comes to hybrid and multi-cloud support.
Perfect, thank you. So we do have another question. They're asking if we have customers today deploying the ransomware features we talked about.
Yeah, we do actually. And it's, as we were saying earlier, it seems to be relevant just across all the different sectors. So you could be a large organization, small one. If you're interested in protecting your data against ransomware or other cyber attacks, that's been sort of the number one conversation. So we do have customers today deploying ransomware solutions, or ransomware protection solutions, I should say. We also have a number of cloud service providers who are offering the ransomware protection as a service today. We've got customers who are doing that as a kind of a specialized backup service that includes that security that is available. So both on-prem and cloud type of solutions for ransomware protection, yes.
Perfect. We do have one more question. They say this sounds great. What's the next step since they're interested in the solution?
I think the next step is to look at Cloudian, try it out, reach out to Cloudian for further details. And if you have any questions, please connect with your local Cloudian sales team or ISRs, or feel free to send us an email or contact us via our website.
Yeah, on that note too, we do have the cloudian.com/free trial. So anyone that is interested can go there as well. That will connect you not only to a free trial, but also to our reps to answer any additional questions that you have. And you can locate that at cloudian.com/free trial. Did you have something to add, Grant?
I was just going to say that.
Oh, perfect. Cool. So if you do have other questions that we didn't get to yet, just feel free to reach out. But, again, I would like to thank Grant and Sanjay for their time today, and to our audience for joining us as well. This is going to conclude our webinar.